This is the Helpful Art Teacher showing you how to create a gesture drawing of a human figure. Draw a line across for the shoulders, a line across for the hips, a line for the spine, and an oval for the head. Make the line of action going from the bottom of the foot the person's putting their weight on all the way up through the hip, across the middle of the spine to the opposite shoulder. Make the line of action thicker than the other lines on the person. Make another line that does the same thing from the other shoulder to the bottom of the other foot. Put in the arms, the legs, and put circles everywhere the body bends, at every single joint. Make the circles for the waist and the hips larger. When you fill in the inside of the body, start at the outside of the hips and the inside of the hips so that the thighs end up thicker than the rest of the body. So there's your line for the shoulders, there's your line for the hips, there's your action, there's your spine, there's your action line. Make the action line thicker than the other lines. Make the other line arms. Start putting in the ovals or circles for the joints, making sure the waist and the hips are larger than the other ovals and circles. When you fill in the arms, and the legs, start at each joint and curve out. Don't try and go all the way from the shoulder all the way to the wrist, or from the wrist all the way to the hand. Always curve in where the joints are. That'll help to give your figure more of a sense of movement. The action line should show one long, fluid, continuous gesture. Before filling your figure, draw circles at every joint. Stop and curve your line inward at each joint when filling it in. Draw the circles for the hips and the waist larger than the other joints. The circles for the hips should almost touch each other. The thighs are larger than the calf. Sometimes you have a person running or facing sideways, and part of the body is overlapping. In this case, the left arm of this figure is part of it is hidden by the body. In this case, the arm and leg look shorter on one side than they do on the other. That's because they're bent. One of the arms and one of the legs are going away from you in space. They're sort of facing directly away from you and directly towards you, so they appear shorter. This phenomena is called foreshortening. Foreshortening is when an object is angled away from or towards the viewer and it appears to be shorter. Here, let me demonstrate. This stylus is 6 squares long, but when I angle it towards you, it becomes 5 squares long. I angle it more towards the viewer, and it becomes only 4 squares long, then 3 squares, then 2 squares, and if I face it directly towards you, it'll only be 1 square long. So therefore, it is foreshortened as it faces towards you. When somebody is leaping up in the air, you start the action line at the foot that you expect them to land on. So in this case, the girl is going to land on the one foot. In this case, you start the action line at the hand the person's putting their weight on. So let's just go through this process again very quickly to review. Make sure you put a dot at each joint. Make sure your action line is one continuous flowing line. Make sure that you start at the foot the person's putting the weight on. Make sure you make the thigh wider than the calf. When you do the body, the waist, curve it in from the shoulder to the hip so that the person's body doesn't look like a box. And that's basically how you draw a gesture drawing. This is Mrs. Windenberg, the Helpful Art Teacher.